my sister told me. You're a nobody, just stay out of our way. Dad agreed and laughed. I just smiled and left. 2 months later they begged me to come back when It was supposed to be a simple dinner. My father's birthday. Same cheap wine, same overcooked roast, same undercurrent of tension simmering just below the surface. The only thing new that night was my sister's dress. Red, expensive-looking, dramatic. She always did have a flair for making an entrance, even at her own father's party. I remember sitting there quietly, carving into my food, nodding when spoken to but mostly staying out of the way. I had learned long ago that silence was safer. I was the shadow at the table. Present, but never part of the spotlight. And then it happened. We were halfway through dessert when my sister, Julia, set her fork down and folded her hands like she was about to deliver a sermon. You know, David, she said, fixing me with a smirk that only she could weaponize. You're a nobody. Just stay out of our way. Her voice was sweet, lilting. But the words landed like a slap. The room went still. I glanced at my father, hoping, stupidly, that he'd say something. Anything. That maybe for once, he'd defend me. But he didn't. Instead, he burst out laughing. Julia! He chuckled, wiping his mouth. Don't be so harsh. Then he looked at me. But she's not wrong. That was it. That was the moment. It didn't even hurt, not the way they probably wanted it to. It was more like confirmation. Like something inside me that had been quietly dying for years finally gave up and whispered, You're free now. I looked at them, my father still chuckling, Julia wearing that victorious grin, and my mother pretending not to hear any of it. And I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're happy. The kind you wear when you're done pretending. Then I stood up, pushed in my chair, and calmly said, Thanks for dinner. And I walked out. No one stopped me. No one called after me. That was the last time I saw that house. But it wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. I didn't cry on the way home. Didn't scream. Didn't break anything. I just drove. Windows down. No music. Just the hum of tires on old pavement, and the late October wind slipping through the car like a whisper. In the rearview mirror, I watched my old life shrink away. A life where I was the quiet one. The background character. The one who paid the bills when Dad's company hit a slump. The one who fixed Julia's laptop when her assistant was too busy to deal with it. The one who never made waves, never asked for anything, never belonged. And they were right. I didn't belong. Not in that house. Not in their world. But they had no idea who I really was. That was the beauty of being invisible. They never saw what I was building. For the past 4 years, I'd been pouring every spare second, every ounce of energy, into a project they never asked about. A piece of software I began in my basement during one of the loneliest winters of my life. At first, it was just an idea, a smarter, streamlined platform for small business logistics. But then it evolved. It started working. Started solving problems that no one else had cracked. And I'd kept it quiet. No fanfare. No bragging. No mention of beta tests or meetings with early investors. I didn't even put my name on the first company paperwork, just initials. Why? Because I knew. I knew what would happen the moment they realized I was doing something big. They'd try to take credit. Or worse, control. So I said nothing. I spent holidays writing code. Skipped parties to pitch to angel investors. And the same night Julia told me I was a nobody? That same night, my startup landed its first 7-figure funding deal. 2 months later, my name would be on the cover of Wired magazine. But for now, I went dark. No calls. No texts. I let the silence stretch long and cold like the distance between stars. And they didn't even notice. At least, not yet. The first sign they were paying attention again came exactly 57 days later. I was sitting in a corner office of a newly leased suite in downtown Chicago. Glass walls, private elevator, skyline views, signing off on an expansion plan that would double our development team. My co-founder, Amir, had just stepped out to take a call when my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I let it ring out. Then it buzzed again. This time, a number I recognized. Julia. The sister who once said I was a nobody, now calling me twice in the same minute after 2 months of complete silence. I didn't answer. I just watched the screen, the name, the desperation. Then came the texts. Hey, call me. It's urgent. We need to talk. It's about Dad. 10 minutes later, Amir walked back in and threw a folded copy of the Financial Tribune onto my desk. My face was on the cover, under the headline. The quiet architect behind Xenologic's $82 million disruption. They know now, Amir said simply. Yeah. They did. Julia's firm, the one she had spent years building her public image around, was under federal review. I didn't know the details yet, but rumors were swirling: mismanagement, a failed merger, investors pulling out. And Dad? His logistics company had quietly filed for Chapter 11 the week before. A friend tipped me off. It wasn't public yet. So now, suddenly, they remembered me. The nobody had become someone they needed. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my phone. Another message came through. I'm sorry about what I said at dinner. We were just stressed. You know how Dad gets. No apology for laughing at me. No real regret. Just stress. Just excuses. Another buzz. Can we meet? Please. We're in trouble. I looked out at the city, my city now, and smiled. Not the calm kind this time. This was the smile of a man who had been dismissed for too long. They had no idea what kind of storm I had become. I didn't respond right away. For 3 more days, I let the silence speak for me. Let them wonder. Let them sweat. By the time I replied, Julia had sent a dozen more messages. They'd gone from urgent, to emotional, to oddly formal. Like she wasn't sure whether to play the sister card or the business one. The last message simply read, We're willing to meet on your terms. So I gave them terms. I invited them to my office. Not a cafe, not a dinner at some neutral ground. My office. A 34th floor conference room with floor-to-ceiling glass, polished concrete floors, and a panoramic view of a city I now had a stake in. I told my assistant to prepare for guests. I told my staff to stay late, just long enough to witness the show. And when the day came, I wore the suit I'd saved for the press conference we postponed. Black, sharp, understated. They walked in right on time, Julia, Dad, and their favorite middleman attorney in tow. All in black coats, faces drawn. For a moment, they looked around like tourists in a foreign country. And in a way, they were. This wasn't their world anymore. It was mine. David, Julia said first, forcing a smile. You look good. I didn't shake her hand. Instead, I gestured toward the seats at the end of the table. Let's not waste time. We sat. Silence settled. Then Julia leaned forward. I know we've had our differences. You told me I was a nobody. I cut in. And Dad laughed. That shut her up. I turned to him. You told me to stay out of the way. Remember that? He said nothing. Just looked down at the glass table, tracing a fingerprint that wasn't there. I stood up and walked to the touchscreen panel on the wall. One tap, and the screen behind me lit up. Headlines. Charts. A real-time valuation tracker showing Xenologic's numbers ticking upward in green. This is what I've been building for the last 4 years, I said. The software you all ignored. The idea you never asked about. The nights I missed holidays, stayed up coding while you made fun of me behind my back. This is what I was doing. I turned around slowly. And now, you're here. Because your companies are failing. Because you need help. Julia's face was red. We're not here to beg. Oh? I smiled. Because it sounds a lot like begging. Dad cleared his throat. Look, maybe we were too hard on you. But this is family. We need to stick together. There it was. The appeal to family. The rope they always used to pull me back in. But this time, I didn't move. Instead, I tapped the screen again. This time, it showed an internal email thread. One that Julia's firm had sent to our shared investor, trying to leverage my name, without my consent. Julia's face drained of color. You tried to attach your sinking ship to my name. That wasn't family. That was fraud. The room was dead silent. I looked each of them in the eyes and said, You taught me something, all of you. You taught me that being underestimated is a gift. You laughed at me, dismissed me, cut me out, and all it did was make me sharper, quieter, more dangerous. Then I leaned in just enough for them to hear the last line. And now? I'm not your family. I'm your reminder. And with that, I pressed one last button. The doors behind them opened. My staff stood there, watching. Reporters too, quiet, polite, summoned for a separate meeting. I, accidentally, double-booked. Julia stood up first, flustered. You set us up. No, I said, walking to the door. I gave you the stage. Then I walked out, leaving them to the sound of clicking camera shutters and quiet murmurs. They came to take. They left empty-handed. Again. The fallout was immediate and delicious. Within 24 hours, photos from the meeting had surfaced online. A grainy shot of Julia's pale face, Dad looking confused, and me walking away in perfect focus, like I knew exactly where the story was headed. Which, of course, I did. The internet did what it always does. It speculated. Who are the strangers in the billionaire's boardroom? Why did the co-founder of Xenologic publicly humiliate a former corporate exec and a failed CEO? By the end of the week, someone pieced it together. Julia's firm had been trying to ride my name in investor meetings. Dad's bankruptcy filings were leaked. The story wrote itself. Suddenly, the family that once mocked me was being mocked themselves. Julia's name trended on Twitter, for all the wrong reasons. Memes, reaction videos, podcast segments. One influencer called her the Silicon Valley sibling who fumbled a fortune. Dad tried to go on the radio to clear the air. The host opened with, So, your son's a self-made millionaire, and you called him a nobody? He hung up halfway through. And me? I just kept working. Every now and then, I'd get a new message. An apology cloaked in manipulation. A voicemail laced with carefully chosen regret. We never meant to hurt you, David. We were under pressure. We always knew you had potential. We just didn't know how to show it. But the truth is, they didn't want to show it. They wanted me quiet. Predictable. Useful. Not powerful. Not free. And now that I was both, they didn't know what to do with me. That's the thing about being underestimated for so long. You start learning to move in silence. You get good at building where no one is watching. And when the curtain finally lifts, you don't owe anyone a bow. You owe them a reminder. After the boardroom fallout and the media storm that followed, I expected things to go quiet. But the thing about silence is, it's never really empty. It just changes its weight. There were no more messages from Julia or Dad, not after their PR firms advised them to lay low. Their damage control was frantic. A soft rebrand here, a sob story interview there. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't need to. Because every time they tried to explain, to rewrite the past, the internet simply pulled receipts. Clips of my father calling me dead weight on an old podcast. Screenshots of Julia's passive-aggressive tweets, once buried, now viral. Every time they reached for sympathy, the world reminded them of the facts. Of the dinner. The laughter. The silence. They weren't just exposed. They were remembered, for the wrong reasons. And I was thriving in a silence of my own design. Xenologic had tripled its valuation. Our software was now being licensed by 3 Fortune 500 companies. I was getting invites I never imagined, keynotes, think tanks, closed-door strategy meetings with names I'd only seen on bookshelves before. But I didn't change much. I still lived in the same apartment, a little more modern now. I still took the train sometimes. I still worked late into the night, earbuds in, hoodie up, just another guy behind a screen. Because the truth was, I didn't want to be seen. Not by them. They hadn't earned the right. Once, I would have given anything for their approval. For just one proud word. But now, their silence was more valuable than their praise. It was proof that they had nothing left to say. The thing about power is, it doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've always been, once the weight of survival is lifted. In the months that followed, I began to realize just how little they had known me, not just as a brother or a son, but as a person. As someone who watched, who listened, who remembered. While they moved through life loudly, I was the one taking notes. I was the one building something real. Now that I was no longer useful to them in the quiet ways, paying bills behind the scenes, fixing Julia's tech meltdowns, showing up at Dad's office on weekends to just lend a hand, they didn't know how to reach me. Because I wasn't a person to them. I was a function. And the moment that function evolved beyond them, they panicked. Julia's downfall was more than public embarrassment. Her firm lost its largest client after a leaked internal memo revealed she tried to claim our software's back-end architecture was her idea first. It wasn't true, of course. The timestamps on my patents, the investor records, even the original GitHub logs, everything told the real story. She tried to salvage her reputation with a sob story interview on a daytime talk show. I watched it once. She said things like, "He always wanted more than the rest of us. We just didn't know how far he'd go." That's when I turned it off. Dad was worse. His company's bankruptcy went through. It wasn't just the logistics business that failed, it was his pride. His network abandoned him the moment his checkbook lost its weight. I heard from a mutual contact that he tried to cash in favors to land a board seat at a smaller firm, only to be told, "We don't want that kind of attention." That's what they lost. Not just wealth. Not just credibility. They lost control. Because for the first time, I wasn't beneath them. I was beyond them. And people like that? They don't know how to handle someone they can't shame into silence. But here's the part they never understood. What I built wasn't just out of ambition. It was built out of necessity. Out of nights spent wondering why I wasn't enough. Out of quiet humiliations. The kind of pain that doesn't make a scene. The kind that lingers. Every "You're not like us" became a line of code. Every snide laugh became a feature in the app. Every dinner table silence was another late-night strategy call. They gave me all the fuel I needed. They just didn't expect the fire would spread so far. And me? I didn't want revenge. Not really. I just wanted them to see what they threw away. To feel the weight of the silence they'd left behind. To know that the man they called nobody had become someone the world couldn't ignore. The funny part? They still never apologized. Not really. Julia sent a half-hearted email about rebuilding family bridges. Dad mailed a Christmas card with no signature, just a typed-out message. "Hope you're well. Maybe we can talk soon." I didn't answer either. Not out of spite. But because they were no longer speaking my language. I'd spent years trying to get them to see me. Now I just wanted them to see what life looks like when they're no longer part of it. It was early spring when the phone rang again. Not my personal line, those close to me knew better. This time it came through the company's switchboard, routed through two assistants, a gatekeeping protocol, and an automated voice that politely said, "You have a personal call waiting on line 2. A man named Richard claims to be your father." Claims. That made me smile. I picked it up. Not out of curiosity, but control. I wanted to see how long it would take for him to ask. "David," he said, his voice thin and unsure. "Richard," I replied. That silence stretched. The kind you could build a house inside. I didn't expect to get through," he finally said. I let him sit in the awkwardness. Then he said it. "I need your help." There it was. Not a hello. Not a how are you. Just a direct request, like we were still living in that house with the cheap wine and the thick tension, and his chair at the head of the table like a throne he never earned. "Help with what?" I asked flatly. A deep sigh. "I'm trying to start over. Something smaller. A local operation. I've got a few investors interested, but well, your name carries more weight than mine now." I said nothing. So he continued, like a salesman with sweaty palms. You could be the face. Or even just a silent partner. Just something to get the others to sign on. I'd give you equity. 40%. Hell, 60. It was almost funny how fast the mighty recalibrate when they realize the crown is no longer theirs to wear. I'm not interested, I said. There was a pause. David. Son. Be reasonable. I know we've had our. You don't get to say son. Not anymore. He flinched. I could hear it in his breath. I leaned back in my chair, watching the rain blur the windows of my corner office. Let me tell you something, Richard. You taught me more than you think. Not through wisdom. Through absence. Through cruelty. Through being exactly the kind of man I promised myself I'd never become. He tried to interrupt. I didn't let him. You want to start over? Then start with the truth. Tell them you failed. Tell them you laughed in your son's face while he built something you didn't even notice. Tell them the only reason you're here now is because the empire you crushed is gone, and the one you ignored is rising without you. Silence. I let it hang. Then, just before I hung up. Oh, and one more thing. He waited. I was the silent partner. In the firm that bought out your last warehouse lease. Have a nice day. Click. I stared at the phone a second longer. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and watched the city shimmer beneath a soft storm. It was a good day to let old ghosts drown quietly in the rain. The knock came on a Thursday evening. Not a call. Not an email. A knock, soft, hesitant. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, it was Julia. She looked different. Less polished. Her makeup was minimal, her coat wrinkled, and the confident posture she used to wear like armor had deflated into something closer to shame. I was nearby, she said quietly. I figured maybe we could talk. I stood in the doorway, saying nothing. She glanced down at her shoes. I've lost everything, David. Investors. Clients. My name doesn't open doors anymore. People see me and they remember that meeting, the boardroom, the press. You. For a moment, her voice caught. But I don't blame you. Not anymore. That surprised me. I blamed you for a long time, she said. For succeeding without us. For not needing us. But you did what we never thought you could. And maybe we hated that, because we were wrong. Her eyes lifted to mine. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to say it. I'm sorry. The words didn't sting. They didn't satisfy either. They just existed. I nodded slowly. I appreciate that, I said. But this isn't a story where we patch things up and go back to the way it was. That door doesn't exist anymore. She swallowed hard and nodded. I know. Then she stepped back. She didn't ask for anything. Didn't push. Just one last look, a quiet one, before she turned and walked away into the night. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. It wasn't closure. But it was peace. And sometimes peace is the loudest ending there is. Months passed. The story faded. The headlines moved on. So did I. Xenologic expanded into Europe. I stopped checking their social media. Their silence became a background hum, familiar, harmless. One morning I received a small package. No return address. Inside was a photo. Me, maybe age 12, sitting alone at a family picnic, watching my sister, my father, everyone else laughing together, backs turned to me. On the back, someone had written in pen. You were never a nobody. We just refused to see you. No name. Just the truth. I placed the photo in my drawer, beneath contracts and patents. Not to hold on to the pain, but to remember the fuel. Because sometimes the ones who bury you are just handing you the dirt to build higher ground. And now? I'm already above the clouds.